Hope everyone's doing well today and having a fantastic weekend. Interesting photo here that I took a couple years back of the moon. I was outside just looking at the sky and noticed that the clouds have been going by really fast, and it was a full moon. It was really an interesting sight to see. So I grabbed my camera, took a picture, took a few, and because when I was before I had gotten the camera out, it appeared that the clouds were moving in the sky and going behind the moon. And it appeared like the moon was almost like just kind of between the clouds, like the clouds were surrounding the moon on the inside, or the outside of the moon and the inside, in front and behind. So as you can see here, the photo appears definitely that the clouds are behind the moon. The moon's not that bright that it's going to shine through dense clouds, like dense rain clouds. That's why when you can't see the moon at night when it's really cloudy. So those lighter clouds, like the ones that are more like the grays and the whites, those it could shine through. But look how clear it is. And then you can see a little bit of the blackness as well of the clouds here that are in front. So it's kind of like going between. So a very interesting photo. But wanted to get to the topic, which is I want to do a video on, my opinion of what makes somebody a shill, an agent, somebody not worth listening to on YouTube. Now, I just want to make this clear. This is just my opinion based on my observations, my experiences. You can disagree. We're all at different levels or paths, stages within our truth seeking. So nobody's going to agree on every single thing. And we might not need to agree on anything. It could be just an individual thing, individual journey. I know that for myself, I have been wrong about things that I felt like I was pretty right about. And once I learned new information and was open to that information, that changed my perception. It wasn't easy, but I was able to get through it. Because the main thing for me is seeking truth. Even though it's very difficult to actually find what's actually true, it's more like the lies, discovering the lies. So, and then piecing it together. I look at this entire life experience and the investigation. It's like putting together a puzzle. So there could be, 100 pieces. There could be 1,000 pieces, tens of thousands, millions of pieces to this puzzle. Some pieces I believe are bigger than others. A bigger piece, like a bigger conspiracy that you've discovered, that could take care of like a big portion of that picture or that puzzle. So I think some are worth more than others. That's just my opinion. People will disagree. That's perfectly fine. I've never found anybody on YouTube, any content creator, or anybody, probably in the messaging back and forth, I've found more like-minded people than some of these content creators. Many of the content creators, there's like 90% of things I'm like right on with and agree with, and then the other 10% I don't. Never found somebody where I agree with absolutely everything. There's some that are very close, and then there's some that, it's like 50-50 or less. So back to what makes somebody a shill or an agent. I think for starters, it's hard to know 100% for sure. Obviously, there's no way to know for sure. Whether they're getting paid by the government, whether they are, they're paid through other ways. I don't know. I can't find that information. However, there are, once again, back to the puzzle, there are pieces you can put together to make your best judgment. And maybe in the future, I'll do a more detailed video with visuals and so you can take a look. But I assume most of us are pretty advanced when it comes to truth seeking, more than the average truth seeker. So I shouldn't need to do the visuals. We should know, at least on this channel, a little bit about, what to look for to begin with. So the first thing is signs, symbols, and numerology. Very, very important. Do not discount those things. This can range from anybody with a really large channel of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of subscribers, all the way down to hundreds of subscribers. So be very wary of the symbolism. So the background when they're on camera, the background, what's in their background? Do they have symbols in their background? Masonic symbolism. Do they have a picture of something? Like for instance, there might be an image, and it might be like a teardrop, and you type teardrop into your numerology calculator, that comes out to be 33. So there's things in the background that are maybe not specific symbols of Masonry, but they equal 33. Maybe there's a school bus. The school bus is 33 in the background. That's interesting. Police is 33. Obviously, anything with police or anything government in the background is going to be suspicious. Also, bricks in the background. That's Masonry right there. So bricks, any symbolism, books. When anybody has books in their background as well, I'm skeptical. It really gives the impression like you're trying to give the credibility and have people trust you because it looks like you've read a lot of books. So that's trying too hard for me. That's not genuine. That's not what I'm looking for. And I want to also make sure people understand this isn't just who's a shill or an agent, but it's like, who do I feel it's worth my time to listen to or to share ideas with? Somebody with a lot of books in their background, I'm not really that interested, quite frankly. Also, their wardrobe, what are they wearing? Are they wearing orange in a lot of their videos? That's, of course, 33. Do they have symbolism on their shirt? Do they have a lightning bolt? Do they have an all-seeing eye? Do they have a pyramid? Do they have anything? I mean, there's a million of them out there. Basically, every symbol that you know of that was man-made is pretty much comes from the occult and Masonry and the secret societies and all that. So very important. But I need to make this point right here, which is one of these things is not the most important thing. So it's not like, okay, you're a shill because you wore a shirt once that had a lightning bolt on it, or you had a background of bricks. If it's continuous and it's also in addition to other things, so hand symbols. So the OK sign, which is the 666 symbol, or the diamond symbol where they put their hands together in a diamond shape. Diamond equals 33. Also, it's a pyramid as well. You could say it's a pyramid symbol. It's a diamond symbol. Of course, the pyramid, 60 degrees on each corner, which is 666. And they love their pyramids as well. So the hand symbols as well, there's many of them, of course. I'm not going to go through all of them. There's the hand holding the lens of the glasses with the fingers, the pinky finger to the middle finger raised, which is the 666 symbol as well. So a lot of those things, the hand symbols. So learn about the hand symbols, learn about the symbolism, learn about the numerology, read up on Masonry. There are some channels out there that do focus on this, but a lot of them that I've found were, in my estimation, shill channels. And why is that? Why do I think they're shill channels? Right? They're giving all this truth. Well, for starters, they have to give you some truth. They have to give you, in many cases, a lot of truth to suck you in, to get you to believe them. So if they're going to just tell you all lies, no one's going to believe them. It doesn't work. It's not effective. The most effective way to manipulate somebody is to mix truth with lies. So that is done very often. So yeah, why? So some channels do a lot of Masonry, exposing Masonry and the symbolism. And why are they not? Well, because there's probably some other topic, some other conspiracy that I'm not on board with, or they're not on board with me. So maybe they push the symbols, like they push exposing the symbols and the numerology. However, they push Christianity, they push the Bible, or maybe they push, they push. I want to get more into like the globe conspiracy thing. Maybe a little bit later, but they push the globe, or they call it, planet Earth, this planet, or, I'm the greatest YouTuber on this planet, whatever. They push the planet stuff. Basically anything that's off, at least in my mind. Because like I said, this isn't all about who's an agent. A lot of it is, but a lot of it's also who do I think is not worth listening to? Well, if I've been down my path, you've been down your path, and then you come across a content creator and they're right on a lot of things, but then there's one thing that they're not, or at least based on your experience or your research that you've done, like they think we live on a globe, and it's like, well, how can you be so smart in these other areas, but you still think we live on a globe, and you think, NASA's telling the truth, the government's telling the truth about that, but they're not telling the truth about these other things you speak of. So it's the contradictions. It's when they are just, they're telling you some truth, but then they're telling you other things that you've discovered are not true. So that's a huge red flag that probably could be an agent. Now, if they have a high sub count, like if they have 100,000 subs or even like 50,000 to 100 or more, then boom, that's like a huge piece of the puzzle that they're an agent, a shill, but definitely somebody not worth listening to. So they have a lot of subs and they speak some truth, but then there's something like a conspiracy or something that they're not on board with, that you've done your research and you've come to that conclusion. So at least for you, it's like, nope, this person not worth listening to. So there's a lot to get into here, but let me try to make this as organized as possible. Obviously, people who have smaller channels, that's a little bit more difficult to detect. And one of them would be, if they have like 500 subs, 1,000 subs, 100, 200 subs, you might think like, oh, there's no way they're an agent or they're a shill. Now, once again, you got to stick to the symbolism, the numerology, so the names too. That's another thing. So like their first name, if it's 33, their last name is 33. If their full name is 33, if their initials are 33, like Chris, Carter, CC, MM. So like, Mark, McAuliffe, MM, that's 33. So when you just flip the 3 on its side. So there's that. And then if in addition they have like occult symbolism in their background, if they're doing the hand signs, they very well could be an agent. Or, they're just somebody that hasn't figured that aspect out yet and maybe not worth listening to or really investing a lot into. Also, if they have a website and they're like selling services that are like truth services, like a consultation about how to be more spiritual and all this stuff, that's a huge red flag to me. I think you cannot 100% cannot sell truth. It can't happen. It's going to distort the purpose of it. It's going to distort the truth. And there's going to always be things you're going to not speak of. You're not going to speak honestly if you're relying on people paying you every month, or paying you, for any service you're doing. So it's just not going to be, you're not going to speak the full truth because you're worried about your bank account. Big problem, big red flag, big conflict of interest. So stay away from that. It's one thing to ask for. I don't really have a problem with people who, and once again, this is all just my opinion. This is me. You could be different. That's fine. Hey, I could change my mind. I've changed my mind over the times. As we get older, we experience more in life. So, hey, I could be wrong on some things for sure. But this is how I feel right now, 100%. I don't have an issue with people asking for donations. I don't have an issue with people selling t-shirts with slogans and stuff and hats and whatever. Like, I don't care. But when you're selling like truth, a consultation, doing like exercises or yoga or whatever spiritual new age nonsense, I think that's a red flag. Doesn't mean the person's an agent necessarily. It's just somebody that, in my opinion, doesn't really get it. Because I don't think you get it if you're trying to, like this. I mean, what if you're wrong? Now that person invested all this time and money into you, and you were wrong. So, this is an individual's journey. This is not like, the guru says what's true and then that's what's true. And everybody, that's idol worship. There's so much idol worship on YouTube in this world and everything, and entertainment. It's just out of control. So back to the topic. So agent, shill, anything like that. There's a lot of channels out there that have a lot of subs, 80,000, 90,000, 100,000. They're not going to be somebody you're going to want to take seriously when it comes to truth. They're not going to help you escape the matrix, exit out of here. They might make your life a little bit better within the material realm, but they're not going to give you the tools you need, or they're not going to help you spiritually in the way that, maybe somebody who's speaking a little bit more truth would. And the reason I'm saying that they're not really speaking enough truth is because they have a lot of subs. YouTube is not going to allow the real truth to be out there like that, to that extent. So it's just not going to happen. That's the way that it's been for many years now, especially since YouTube started cracking down a lot more, 5, 6, 7 years ago. So yeah, any large sub count, definitely. And another thing is if they are in some sort of like group, so they speak about other YouTubers, so they're like in it, they're all like kind of in the same club, they all recommend the same channels, maybe they speak highly of, like, they might speak favorably or highly of like a David Icke or somebody like that, who's clearly, he's been on television, he's a mainstream conspiracy theorist, those types. Then it's like, I'm not interested in you at all. If you're going to be speaking nicely or kindly about David Icke, I mean, give me a break. I don't care if he speaks some truth. He also thinks that on that day in September, back in 01, also thought that was a hologram. So, but that's not true. It's not a hologram. And what that does is that takes the media completely out of it. So that was a media, the whole like September incident was a media hoax. So that was the media who was behind that, covering that whole thing up, that there was no incident, no planes, nothing like that. So if it's a hologram, then that gets the media out of it. And it's like, oh, that makes you think the media is separate from the government, which they're not. They're all the same. So they're all in the same group, all in the same club. The world is a stage. So, another thing too, a big one. This is huge, right? So anybody pushing the globe, I'm sorry, a lot of you out there probably still think we live on a spinning ball, hurling through space. That is not what I believe. Absolutely not. If that's what you believe, you need to do some more research. I know you haven't done enough research, or you're not honest, or you have something you have to work out within yourself, and you haven't gotten to that point yet. It's something that I've been doing on and off research on for the last 3.5, 4 years. So if I, in any way, believe that it was still a spinning globe, then I would admit that it's not. So now, what is it? Is it is it the flat Earth that they speak of? Of course, flat Earth. I believe flat Earth does equal 33. Yeah, flat Earth, I believe, check me on that, but I think flat Earth does equal 33. So they put names to all these things, obviously, like to make you think like, oh, it's a pancake in space floating around, and they want to just, it makes you not want to even look into it. So I think we live on a plane. I'm not sure how far out it goes. I'm not sure if there's a dome. There could be. I don't know. All I know is I don't know. And that's another thing too. So like if somebody's so certain about something, like I know this, this is the truth. I mean, come on. I'm going to be skeptical. Going to be very skeptical. So the thing is, we don't know. We don't know a lot of things. We can guess. I also don't trust basically any history whatsoever. I don't think it really does you any good unless you have the physical writings or the physical evidence of history, which is, almost impossible to get your hands on if it even exists. It's just stories, people telling stories. Could be true. Some stuff could be true. Obviously, there's a lot of lies we know about in history, but some of it could be true. But what does it really matter? I can't prove it. All I can do is go based on day one in my life until the last day, and that's how I'm gonna, determine my reality and determine, what decisions I'll make or how I will perceive things. And also stories from, family members, elderly people that you trust. I mean, that's worth a lot more weight than some book someone wrote, and they're just playing controlled opposition. Which brings me to the next topic, which is controlled opposition. There's a ton of that out there. It's everywhere. Every topic has controlled opposition, especially truth topics. Now, one of them is the flat earth. So what happens is you learn, you get sucked into, you question the globe. Usually it's some video on YouTube. You're digging, going down that rabbit hole, and it's like, okay, man, there's a lot of evidence that the moon landing didn't happen. There's a lot of evidence that we don't live on a globe. And then you get sucked into I like to call it like the AE map cult. You get sucked into the flat earth cult. So that's going to be the globe busters, the Jeranisms, the Dearths, and many more. And then there's a lot of like people outside that core that are still associated with them. I haven't really followed them in such a long time. I mean, you could say, Russian Vids and Brian Stavely, they're all associated together. There's so many more. I mean, there's like hundreds of people associated with them. Loosely, that's the thing. That's that club I'm talking about. Like, they're in this group. They don't speak negatively about each other. There's some infighting. They will fight with each other about certain things. But they're part of the same group. All you have to do is do the research on them and pay enough attention to them, and you just see the patterns, and then that's how you come up with it. This isn't stuff you're just going to see on day one. You have to see the patterns. You have to do a lot of time, spend a lot of time on it. I was fooled by them at one point for sure. So that's one of the things where I'm like thinking, well, man, if these guys got to be telling the truth. I mean, they're against the globe, and there's no way. I didn't know what controlled opposition was at that time. So there's a lot of it, and that is an example of controlled opposition. So what they do is they push, well, they were in that movie as well. So if you're on a movie or on TV or anything like that, then that's a huge red flag, obviously. It's huge. And they push the AE map. They push that circle map where the sun goes over in a circle and the moon. That has been debunked beyond imagination. And one of the main reasons they come up with a stupid map like that is so that globers can easily debunk it. Globers who know what they're talking about, who are intelligent, they're going to debunk that easily and appeal to authority, which is the governments and NASA and the whole, this whole globe conspiracy. They're going to appeal to that over some map that's ridiculous and doesn't work. Also, there's that Christian element to it. So there's always that. So that with the flat earth, there's a huge Christian part of that as well. So it's like either you're not a Christian or you're a Christian, and you're interested in. It's like either you're a New Ager, kind of like a New Ager who's into the flat earth, or you're a Christian. That's that cult right there, that flat earth cult. However, that doesn't mean that the earth is not flat. It just means that there is controlled opposition to keep you away from the truth, which is getting more into deeper topics like the Mandela effect. Now, there's YouTube creators out there who will be totally cool with the flat earth. They'll be cool with, organized religion being a deception and manipulation and mind control. But then they don't see the Mandela effect. So it's like, to me, I think, okay, you have a big following. You've been pretty successful on YouTube in a truther channel, and you haven't done enough research on the Mandela effect to see that that's a reality, that this is a fluid reality, not physical, fluid reality. And there are these changes that happen, and there's evidence of those changes. So you either haven't looked into it enough, or you're gatekeeping the subject. You want people to stay away from that, because once you dive into the Mandela effect, then you're able to uncover more layers of this realm. That's another puzzle piece. That's a big one. I think the flat earth is a huge piece, and another big piece is the Mandela effect. Now, the flat earth piece, what that does is that changes the way your senses perceive this reality. So instantly it's like you go outside, it's not a spinning globe, and I can't explain it. You have to see it for yourself. It changes the way your senses interact with this world. This changes the way you see the world. Big difference between that and thinking you're living on a globe in space and all that. And even if you don't believe in space, outer space and all that, and space travel, if you still believe we're living on a globe, that's still going to change your senses. So what happens is that will mess up your senses. So then the governments, and they can come out with a new psyop and mind control you with that. Like, for instance, what happened in the events of 2020 in the last several years, the scaredemic. So they can get you to believe that, more likely to believe something like that. They can get you to believe in aliens. They can get you to believe in things that you normally wouldn't if you trusted your senses. Because not trusting your senses is one of the main things they try to get you to do, so they can get you to believe in their psyops. So that is why I believe the flat earth piece is huge. It doesn't matter so much what the shape is, it matters the lie. The lie is what matters. The fact that you were lied to about it and they want to change your perception. So the Mandela effect as well, it's a huge piece. What that will do is that will show you that this is a fluid reality. That gets you more into that, simulation theory as well. And leads you closer to, I believe, the soul trap theory, which of course is another terrible name to put on it. It it insinuates right away that it's a trap and you can't get out, and very negative. So anybody who's into truth and they're kind of like looking around at certain topics, but they're not too deep into it, that's going to keep them away from looking into it further. Just like sort of flat earth as well, because it just kind of sounds dumb. And there's so much protecting that out there, like as far the protecting the lie. There's so much like making fun of and mocking it to such an extent that it almost seems like that it just makes it more obvious to me as well. So not really much more to go on the agent ideas. I'm sure I've missed a few things. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, but I'm sure I've missed some things. There's so much to it, and I can go into more detail at another time. The lack of diversity of content is another one I wanted to mention. If somebody just sticks in their own lane on every with all these, there's so many topics out there about truth. We know as truth seekers. I like to call it truth seeker, not so much truth community or a truther. I don't like those terms necessarily. I like truth seeker. So for us truth seekers out there, we know that there's more than one topic to learn about, and more than one subject. So if there's a content creator out there, having diversity really, helps with the trust a little bit, I guess, or with the legitimacy in my mind. So if there's no diversity, it's just like one topic, one thing, and they never change their mind either. And even if they're given arguments to things, they don't they don't really, they could just easily delete your comment or block you. That can happen, and that does happen, and that's a huge red flag, obviously. But then their arguments that they give back as to why they still believe what they believe, or why they only do one or two topics. It's just make your own judgment there. A lot of times it can be very weak excuses. So also, yeah, anybody talking about evolution, anybody talking about this world's been around millions of years and humans have been around hundreds of thousands, millions of years, any of that talk as well, or germ theory as well. So anybody who's believes in the germ theory, after what we've seen over the past several years here, it's pretty obvious, and especially if you dig deeper and do your research, that that was just something that was created to, for more mind control, of course, so they can control you with a microscopic organism. That's, something that's invisible and that you can't detect. That is the biggest mind control right there, as well as certain medical procedures they want to put you through as well that will make you likely to do that. And there's a lot of programming, in movies, sci-fi movies, television over the decades prior to 2020, leading up to it, about, those types of things. So those microorganisms and how they attack your body and and eventually kill you, that eventually, people will be like, oh, that's realistic to them at some point, at least a little bit. It just has to be a little bit believable, and then they'll go along with it in the future. So yeah, the world is a stage. So anybody who thinks countries are, they're sovereign and they make their own decisions and rules and that all the leaders aren't together, that's another one. And you can clearly see, the leaders around the whole world, they're fighting, they're against each other, but then, they use the same symbols. They use the same Masonic symbolism. They use that peace sign. They love that one. They love the New World Order. They're all call for a New World Order, even though they're all, supposed to be enemies, but they want to work together and have one world order and make things peaceful and happy for everybody. It just doesn't make any sense. Also, and I don't know why, it sucks that I forgot this one because this is huge. The flat earth is a big one. The flat earth is a huge clue or proof that these countries are all working together because, and the moon landing fits into that as well. So they're all covering up the flat earth. They're all covering up with their maps, with the map and everything. Also with the moon landing, the U.S. went to the moon, and wonderful. First time, man stepped foot on the moon. That was a battle against Russia. Russia didn't get to the moon. So why didn't Russia expose the clear fakery of the moon landing for the U.S.? The U.S. probably wanted to show their exceptionalism and their power by going to the moon. And the Russians, they didn't tell their citizens that it was faked. They could have done that, and they didn't. That's one clue. That's one thing. But that's one other reason why the flat earth, the moon landing thing is huge, because they're all going with the same program, even things that are clearly faked, like the ISS, which is clearly faked. There's so many glitches that I think they almost put out there purposely. So yeah, those things are huge. Another thing as well, yeah, any time they're mentioned on the news or TV, or anything like that. So there was a case a couple years back. It was, his name was Mac. Flat Earth Fokker. That was his channel, Flat Earth Fokker. And he was on the news. He had allegedly passed from the CV, which, he was against the masks, against all that stuff. And he was, he was, I don't remember the story, all the details, but, he was from Canada and coming to the U.S., and, he didn't want to wear a mask, and he got in trouble and had to go to jail or something. I think it was in Canada. It was the other way. And on the news, they were saying that he was on his way to a flat earth conference. So that looped in both, okay, he doesn't believe in the boogeyman disease, but he also believes the earth's flat. It's to make the truth flat earthers look dumb, look stupid. So they do that a lot as well. So any YouTuber, I don't care if they have, I don't care how many subs they have. If they're on the news and they're spoken about on the news, it's part of their creation. So there might be a 0.05% chance, like a 0.5% or 1/4% or 0.1% chance that could be legit. But, it's such a small possibility that if it doesn't raise a major red flag, if that happens, then you probably have a little bit more time in truth seeking to go. And I want to also say this before I wrap up here, is that if somebody is, an actor, if somebody's been on TV or, maybe worked in television, I'd be highly skeptical. However, it doesn't automatically make them an agent or a shill. So that's something where you need to use your own judgment. So that's where it's that puzzle piece. It's putting together that puzzle. So, okay, everything else about them is completely legit. Seems to be completely legit. They don't flash the symbolism. They don't, they don't have 33s everywhere. They're not contradictory with their information. They're open to new ideas. They don't get defended when somebody questions them or anything like that. So everything looks legit. But yeah, they did a little television, or they were behind the scenes on a network or something. I'd still be skeptical. I'd want to do more digging and more research on that individual if it mattered to me enough. I would want to do more digging on that. But I wouldn't just automatically think that they're a shill. I want to hear what they say. It is about the information. And that's where the last thing I'm going to get to would be being on camera. So showing one's face, giving one's identity away. So clearly now, right here, right now, I'm not on camera. That doesn't mean I won't be at some point in the future. But that is not an automatic indicator they're a shill or an agent because they're not on camera. A lot of shills and agents are on camera. That doesn't mean that they are not. Obviously, they are. We all know, of shills and agents out there, and they have no problem showing their face. That doesn't make them exempt from this scrutiny of being an agent potentially. So it's all about the information. It's not about, I would love to never be on camera ever and just have it be all based on the information because that's what's important. I'm not going to like put myself on camera just to make it look like I'm legit. So it's about what I'm saying. Does that make sense and resonate with you or not? Have I lied? Have I contradicted myself? Am I staying away from certain topics? Those are the things you should decide. But in reality, it all comes down to you. It comes down to your experiences because not everybody is going to agree with the same thing. We're all at different levels or at different places on this journey. So, you could be earlier on than me, or I could be earlier on that journey than you. But here's the thing, I will say this, if you're later on in this journey and you've been around many, many years, I haven't been around that long with truth seeking. I guess technically maybe 7 or 8 years, but more like advanced, maybe like 3 years, 4 years. But I'm not as old as some other people out there. If they still think we're living on a spinning globe, they're going to have to bring some really good evidence to the table. Okay? And just because I disagree strongly does not mean that I'm covering anything up. Okay? Remember, you're the one who's trusting the government story. You're trusting the mind control. There was a YouTuber the other day that said he could get hit by a meteor. This is nonsense. So people saying they could get hit by a meteor, those types of things, it's just complete nonsense. Oh yeah, and one more thing before I forget, and then I promise I will wrap this up. I don't really have any notes. I have a couple things written down, but I don't have any notes or anything, so I'm just kind of like a conversational kind of thing, I guess. But vegetarianism or veganism, that's a big, big red flag. That is huge within the New Age community. All right, you will see a lot of that within New Age. It is horrific. So anybody out there now, it's something that I was open to at one point when I got into truth. That's something that you think that you're following somebody who speaks some truth, and then they tell you they're a vegetarian or they're a vegan. And you think, oh yeah, that must be true too, because they're telling the truth about these other things that I've verified as being true myself. So they must be right about that. No, that's a huge red flag. That could be an agent or a shill. No question about it. Especially if they have a lot of them in New Age too, they have this hypnotic presence to them. Like the way they speak very slowly. It's paced just right to put you in a hypnotic trance almost, so that you will just receive their information. You will not question it. Okay? If it feels good, it doesn't mean that it's right. It doesn't mean that it's true. So a lot of them are pushing vegetarianism and veganism. Now, why is this an issue? Well, maybe because, for starters, there is tons of nutrients that are not in plants. They are monocropped. They are not natural. They do not exist. Most of them, 90% of them or more, do not exist the way that you find them at the grocery store or even at a farm or anywhere in agriculture. They are not found in nature. They are not found in the wild. These are essentially man-made foods. So I don't want to be eating man-made foods. Plus, gives you a lot of digestion issues, gives you a lot of gas and bloating, and also it doesn't have the nutrition. So it's missing like, 15 plus micronutrients. If you also look at online, if you type in why I'm no longer vegetarian or why I'm no longer vegan, you will see, hundreds of videos of people's testimonies, their experience with veganism or vegetarianism. And they'll tell you right there why they stopped. You look up another topic like why I'm no longer carnivore, you're not going to see much of that at all. So you're going to see like a couple videos here and there where they're just talking about like, oh, I just couldn't stick to it. My cravings were too much for sugar, or I didn't have energy, and blah, blah, blah. And there's ways to get around that. I'm not saying like, you have to eat carnivore or whatever. Just be aware. Like, I think eating what we eat is so very important. I think we need to stick to as natural as possible. What's naturally provided out there in nature, and obviously animals are, and they have a ton of nutrition. And there's a war on fat. There's a war on saturated fat. There's a war on animal fat. Like, another time, I heard somebody say on a YouTube channel, he was talking, and then he said something about, like, he's into fitness stuff, and he's a truther, right? He's a so-called truther, and he just mentioned healthy fats. And I'm like, that instantly, I'm thinking like avocados, I'm thinking like coconut oil, whatever, some sort of like healthy fat that's in a plant. Now, plants don't have fat. Fat is an animal substance. It's not found in plants. That's not fat. It's oil. It's not fat. So you need fat. You need saturated fat. You need cholesterol. There's a war on all those things. There's a war on raw milk, all these animal products, and that's something to keep an eye on. So, and the thing is, this isn't something where I've just never considered the other option. I mean, hell, I would say for 2-3 years, I was largely plant-based. I ate very little meat at all. So I've been down that path. Okay, I had to come full circle. Now I eat more meat than I've ever eaten in my life, and I feel way better than I did before. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I do feel a lot better than I did when I was eating mostly plants. I don't have the cravings. I don't feel as hungry anymore. I don't have to I'm not like constantly thinking about food. Like I got to eat something, and thinking about, oh, how tasty this or that is. Like I'm not. I just eat. I feel good. I feel more natural, and I move on. And it's great. So yeah, I think that's enough. I can get into more detail in the future on some of these signs and symbols and the backgrounds and some other things I can look at. And this should just be obvious to people who watch these videos or who are subscribed. It should be obvious that if you have, 100,000 plus subs and, you have Masonic symbolism and all over the place in your video, like it should be pretty obvious, right? And if they're like, oh, David Icke wrote a great book or whatever, I mean, that should be obvious to you. It's, so maybe it's not. Hopefully this helps a little bit. Let me know in the comments what you think. Feel free to like and subscribe as well, especially if you made it this far through the video. I'd really appreciate it. But yeah, everybody have a great weekend, and we'll catch you on the next one.